We continue now at the top of Daf Tzadi Gimel Amud Beis in Meseches Bava Kamma. This is Bava Kamma Daf 93b. The ninth parak of Bava Kamma begins with the Mishnah. The Mishnah says, Hagozel eitzim v'ason kelim. If somebody steals wood and then he turns that wood into kelim, into vessels, or tzemer v'ason begadim, he steals wool and he turns that into clothing. The halacha is mishalim kashas hagazela. He has to pay according to the amount it was worth at the time that he stole the item. Rashi explains, Hagozel eitzim mishalim kashas hagazela demei eitzim v'tzemer, meaning he pays the value of the wood or the wool. Ve'ein chayev lahachzer lo kelim. He is not chayev to give back these kelim that he now created. Dekani b'shinoi, because the gazlan acquires the items through this shinoi, through this physical change in the item. And the Mishnah continues, Gazal param uberes v'yolda, if he steals a pregnant cow and it gives birth. Rochel to una v'gazal, let's say he steals a sheep that is full of wool and then he shears it. Meshalim demei para ha'omedes leilit, he pays the value of a cow that is going to give birth. Udemei rochel ha'omedes ligazes, or the value of a sheep that is ready to be sheared. And Rashi explains, Udmei rochel ha'te'una ligazes, again the value of a sheep that is ready to be sheared, v'ha'odef sheshava achshav, that extra that it's worth now, meaning havlad v'hagiza, meaning the actual offspring or the actual wool yoser, it's worth a little more now, shalohu, that he can keep, to kananu b'shinoi, because he acquires that through the shinoi, so he acquires the extra through the shinoi, and again he just pays for the value of what he stole at the time that he stole it. And the Mishnah continues, Gazal parav v'nisabra etzlo, if he steals a cow and it becomes pregnant by him, v'yolda, and then it gives birth, or rachel v'nitana etzlo, let's say he steals a sheep and then it begins to have wool by him, v'gazazan, he shears it, again the same idea, meshalim kashatz hagazel, he pays according to the time when the item was stolen. Zeh haklal, this is the rule, kol hagazlonim meshalim kashatz hagazel, when it comes to all thieves, they always pay kashatz hagazel like the moment that they stole the item. And the Gemara says, Amri, the sages say, Eitzim v'ason kelim in. If you have wood and you turn it into kelim, that, yes, is considered to be a shinoi. However, shifan lo, if he just smooths out the wood, that is not enough of a shinoi to be considered a kinyan. Similarly, tzemer v'ason begadim, the Mishnah seems to be saying wool that's made into clothing, in, yes, that is considered to be a shinoi. But livnan lo, but if he just whitens the wool, that is not enough. And the Gemara says, Uramini, we have a contradiction from the following brisa. Gazal eitzim v'shifan, if he steals wood and he smooths it out, avonim v'sitasan, similarly by stones, he smooths out the stones. Tzemer v'livnan, he steals wool and he whitens it. Pishtan v'nakeu, he steals flax and he cleans it. Meshalim kashas hagzel, in all of these cases he pays like the moment he stole it, meaning to say, these are considered enough of a shinoi. It seems to be a contradiction to our Mishnah. Amar Abaya says, Tana didon katani shinoi derabanan dehadra. Our Tana in the Mishnah is teaching what's called a shinoi only on a derabanan level, because it's a shinoi that actually could be reversed. V'chol shekein shinoi doraisa, and certainly if you had a shinoi doraisa, something that cannot be reversed, eitzim v'ason kelim be'eitzim meshupin. And how could that be? Let's say you have wood and you turn them into vessels, but the wood that you had, it was already smoothed out, it was already ready to be made into kelim. Umayin inhu nisarim, meaning to say you stole boards of wood, and therefore the shinoi dehadr liber yasu, that's a shinoi that actually could go back. You could take apart that kli and make it what it was before. The boy mishlavlu, again, you could take it apart. It's a shinoi that goes back, that's possible to go back to what it was originally. And similarly, tzemer v'asan begadim, similarly when we're talking about wood that you turn into clothing in our Mishnah, but tzemer tavi, we're talking about wool that's already spun. The shinoi dehadr liber yasu, again, it's a shinoi that could go back to what it was originally. The boy sasar le, if he wanted to, he can destroy, so to speak, take apart that which he created with the wool, and it will go back to what it was originally. That's what our Mishnah is saying. It's talking about a shinoi that could go back, and on a derabanan level, that is a shinoi. V'chol shekein shinoi doraisa, and when you learn that in our Mishnah, certainly, if there's a shinoi on a doraisa level, that is certainly a shinoi. But Tana brought in the outside Tana, meaning the Tana of the brisa that we just brought, shinoi doraisa katani, that's teaching an actual shinoi doraisa, v'shinoi derabanan lo katani, but the brisa is not dealing with shinois on a derabanan level. And the Gemara continues, Ravashi says, Tana didon nami shinoi doraisa katani. Our Tana also is talking about a shinoi on a doraisa level, and it's not a contradiction to the brisa, because eitzem v'ason kelim, when we're talking about wood that is turned into kelim, buchani, we're talking about you're turning the wood into pestles, the hainu shifon, that's the same thing as the brisa is talking about, it just requires smoothing out the wood. And semer v'ason begadim, when we're talking about wool that's being turned into garments, namti, that's talking about felt, the hainu shinoi de lo hadar, and these are all talking about shinuyim that are not able to go back to the way they were originally. Rashi explains, Kalim buchani lichtosh, meaning to say you have a pestle that you're going to use to crush. Dahainu shifon, all you're doing is smoothing it. Veleka chakika, you don't have to carve it out. Therefore, it's exactly what the Bryce is talking about. And begodim namti, begodim is referring to felt. Feltir belaz, Rashi says felt. De'in malavnim oso atzemer, you don't whiten that kind of wool. Avol hecha delivnon kanya, but if there would be a situation where you would whiten it, it certainly would be a kinyan. And Rashi notes, namti, when we're talking about felt, ein hatzemer choser od lebriyo, so that wool can't go back to what it was originally. Leos kol name of a name of ifnei atzma, it's not possible to separate out each strand. But the Gemara continues, V'libun mihav shinoi, is it really true that whitening wool is considered to be a shinoi? Uramini, we have the following contradiction, Lo hispik litno lo ad shetzavo potter. Let's say a person didn't yet give the Kohen the reishis hagez, that is the first of the shearings of the wool that is supposed to be given to the Kohen. If he didn't give it to him and then he dyed the wool, so at that point in time he's potter. He doesn't need to give it anymore because that's considered to be a shinoi. But livno v'lo tzavo, what if he whitened it but he didn't yet dye it? So chayiv, he's still chayiv to give the reishis hagez. Apparently whitening it is not considered to be a shinoi. And to that the Gemara says, Amar Abaye says, Lokash, it's not difficult. Ha Rabbi Shimon, Ha Rabbanan. One is the opinion of Rabbi Shimon and one's the opinion of the Rabbanan. It's actually machlokas tanoim, whether whitening it is considered to be a kinyan. The Tanya, as we learned in a Brisa, Gazazo, if he shears the wool, Tavo, if he spins the wool, Viargo, if he weaves the wool, Ein mitzdarif, so then that wool doesn't join other wool in terms of the chiyuv of reishis hagez. But when it comes to livno, if it comes to whitening the wool, so there we have a machlokas tanoim. Rabbi Shimon Omer Ein mitzdarif. Rabbi Shimon says at that point in time it doesn't join together with the other wool. We'll see Rashi in a moment. The Chachamim Omer mitzdarif. The Chacham say it does join together, and there is a machlokas tanoim regarding whitening the wool. Rashi explains, Lo hispik litno l'reishis hagez l'kohen ad shetzavo. Let's say he didn't give the first of the shearings to the Kohen, and then he already dyed the wool. So at that point, potter, he's potter from giving it to the Kohen. Dekanya b'shinoi, he's actually acquired it through this shinoi, through the physical change. And Rashi notes, V'damim nami lo mishalim. He also doesn't need to pay money to the Kohen. The lav gezel gomru, it's not really stealing, the lo mata liyadi, because it never really reached the possession of the Kohen. And then we have this machlokas of ein mitzdarif or mitzdarif. Does it join together? Let's say he whitens the wool. Rashi explains, ein mitzdarif t'tnan b'shchitas chulin. We learned in the Mishnah as follows: Chamish rechelos gozezos kol achas mono pras. If you have 5 sheep and they're sheared, each one you shear the amount of a mona and a half of wool. Chayavos b'reishis hagez. So at that point in time, that's all mitzdarif. It all joins together. You now have a chiyav of reishis hagez. For reishis hagez ma, what's reishis hagez? Hagoz is rochel achar shegozeza nosen min hagizel l'kohen. After he shears the sheep, he shears the wool off. He gives from the shearings to the Kohen. Lefi ma sheyirtz, according to what he wants to give. Uvilvad shetahei nesina chashuv. As long as what he's giving is considered chashuv, is considered an important amount. V'katani, and so it says over there, dim gazaz achas v'tzava. Let's say he shears one of the animals and he dyes the wool. V'chein shniya, then he does that with the second animal. V'chein shlishis, and then he does that with the third. Ein mitzdarfos lemono pras. So then the wool, that wool does not join together to be the mona and a half that he needs. L'schayiv, in order to be chayiv in reishis hagez, to kananu b'shina, because he acquires it in shinoi. So in other words, if it says ein mitzdarif, essentially it's the equivalent of saying that there is a kinyan over here, there's a kinyan b'shinoi, and so therefore we have a machlokas by whitening the wool. Rabbi Shimon says ein mitzdarif. If Rabbi Shimon is saying ein mitzdarif, that means that Rabbi Shimon holds that is considered to be a kinyan, it is considered to be a shinoi, but the Chachamim say mitzdarif, that means it's not considered to be a shinoi. And the Gemara continues, Rava Amar Rava says, Hava Rabbi Shimon, you can really say that both are the sheet of Rabbi Shimon, and within Rabbi Shimon himself, he makes a distinction where sometimes whitening is considered a shinoi that's kona, sometimes not. But Lokash, it's not difficult. Hada nafze nefutze, in one case we're talking where he just combs it with his hand, and hada sarke sruke, but if he combs the wool with a comb in order to whiten it, then already it would be a kinyan, it would be a shinoi. Rashi says, nafze biyad, if he does it with his hand, velo have a shinoi kuli hai, that's not such a shinoi, but sarke b'misrak, but if he does it with a comb, then it is a shinoi. We can make a distinction within Rabbi Shimon himself. And the Gemara continues with another answer. Rabbi Chia bar Avin, Rabbi Chia bar Avin says, Hada chavre chivure. In one case we're talking where you just whiten it, that would not be a shinoi that's kona. But Hada kavre kivruya. But the other case we're talking where it's actually bleached with sulfur, and that would be considered a shinoi that is kona. Rashi says, the kavre begofris lehislab and yaf. Again, if he uses sulfur in order to bleach it, so then it would be considered a shinoi. That would be a whitening that would be considered significant. But the Gemara continues, Hashta tsevel Rabbi Shimon lo have a shinoi. The Bach takes out the words yesh lomar. Now that we're saying that dying, according to Rabbi Shimon, is not considered a shinoi, so libon have a shinoi, but Rabbi Shimon would say that whitening is considered a shinoi. And where's the source for this? The Tanya, as we learned in a brisa, Gazaz rishon v'tzavo. Let's say he sheared a little bit and then he dyed it. Rishon v'tzavo. He sheared a little bit and then he spun the wool. Rishon v'argo. He sheared a little bit and then he wove the wool. Ein mitzdarif. So it's not going to join together. The idea is that that's considered. All of these kinds of shinuyim are considered to be kinyonim, and therefore it's not going to be mitzdarif. Rabbi Shimon ben Yehuda Omer Mishum Rabbi Shimon. Rabbi Shimon ben Yehuda says in the name of Rabbi Shimon, Tzavo, that if he dyes it mitzdarif, it does join together. And apparently here we see, according to Rabbi Shimon, that dyeing it is not considered to be a shinui. So how could it be that libun, that whitening it, is considered to be a shinui? Amar Abaye says, Lokash, it's not difficult. Harabanan, I'll leave with Rabbi Shimon. Rabbi Shimon ben Yehuda, I'll leave with Rabbi Shimon. It could be a machlokus within Rabbi Shimon. In one case, we're following the Rabbanan according to Rabbi Shimon. Within the Rabbanan according to Rabbi Shimon, it would be considered a kinyan, it would be a shinoi. But Rabbi Shimon ben Yehuda says in the name of Rabbi Shimon that dyeing it and also whitening it would be mitzdarif, and it would not be considered a shinoi that is kona. And the Gemara continues, Rava says, Liolam lo pligi Rabbanan led Rabbi Shimon ben Yehuda. Really, the Rabbanan do not argue on Rabbi Shimon ben Yehuda in terms of Rabbi Shimon's shita, and we can make it consistent, even though Rabbi Shimon says that dyeing it is not considered a shinoi that's kona. However, v'shani tzeva, but it's different when you're talking about dyeing it whole v'yachol ha'aviro al yidei tzafon. That's something that you actually could take away the dye using detergent, and therefore that's something that since it's possible to undo it, that's basically hadr libriyasa, would go back to the way it was originally. That's not a shinoi that's kona. However, libun, as Rashi says, avol libun lo hadr libriyasa, when it comes to libun whitening it, that's not something that you can go back on. It can't be changed back, and therefore the libun would be considered a shinoi. And the Gemara continues, if we are going with this answer and saying that Rabbi Shimon holds that seva, that dye, is not considered a shinoi that's kona, so v'chika tani hasum, so therefore when we learned there, when we said just above, lo hispik litno lo achet savo pater, it says that if he didn't give him the reishis hagez until he dyed it, so then he's pater. It sounds like the dyeing it is considered to be a shinoi and is pater from reishis hagez. V'ukimna kedivrei hakol, we said that follows everyone, even Rabbi Shimon, so that's bekol le'ilam, that's when the person dyed it with indigo. The lo avar, that's not something that can be taken away. Once it's dyed with indigo, it's permanent, and there even Rabbi Shimon would agree that it is considered a shinoi. And so that's how we can explain that Mishnah and Chulin according to everyone, even Rabbi Shimon. And the Gemara continues, Amar Abaye says, Rabbi Shimon ben Yehuda, Ubeis Shammai, Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov, Rabbi Shimon ben Elazar, Rabbi Yishmael. All of these Tanoim, Rabbi Shimon ben Yehuda, Beis Shammai, Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov, Rabbi Shimon ben Elazar, and Rabbi Yishmael, Kulu Svirul, they all hold Shinoi b'makomo Omed, that even when you have a Shinoi, we still say that it stays in the Rishus of the original Bailam. It's not considered to be a Kinyan. As Rashi says, b'makomo Omed, Ein Zoz me Rishus Bailam Harishonim, just because you have a Shinoi, it doesn't leave the original owners, Va'afilu Nishtane, even if there is some kind of change. And the Gemara will now go through each Tana. The Gemara says, Rabbi Shimon ben Yehuda Hadam, and Rabbi Shimon ben Yehuda, we already said above. Now Tosfos notes, Rabbi Shimon ben Yehuda Hadam and Tema, it's a wonder. Habitavo va'argo, Rabbi Shimon ben Yehuda above said by spinning it or weaving, Moda, he actually did admit that the Shinoi is considered to be an effective Shinoi. Velo Polag Ela he only argued by dyeing it. So by dyeing it, he said that's not a Shinoi, but there is such a concept of Shinoi Kona. Mishum Delo Chashav Le Shinoi. It's just that he didn't consider dyeing to be a real Shinoi, because the actual wool doesn't fundamentally change. And so Tosas explained, we can explain as follows, the lav dafga amru davar echad. It doesn't mean that all these Tanoim completely agree with one another. Ela kolomar b'shita achasein. It just means in general they are together. There are examples of them saying ideas where Shinoi is not Kona. We find that in many places. So in other words, even though Rav Shimon ben Yehuda certainly agrees that there is a concept in certain situations where the Shinoi is considered significant and it can affect the Kinyan, etc., but he doesn't say that everywhere. As again, as Tosas noted, he doesn't say that by tzvia, he doesn't say that by dyeing the wool. So that's what we already noted. Beis Shammai Maihi, where do we see that Beis Shammai hold like this? The Tanya, as we learned in a brisa, Nosan lo chitin besnena, if a person gave a prostitute wheat as payment for the prostitution, the halach is something that's given as payment for the prostitution cannot go on the mizbeach. Vason solis, but then it was made from wheat into flour. Or zeisim vason shemen, it was olives, it was made into oil. Anovim vason yain, it was grapes and it was made into wine. So it underwent a shinoi. So we have a machlokes, Tani Chada, one brisa says osir, that it's osir to go on the mizbeach. V'tanyu idach mutter, the other brisa says it's mutter. V'yomer Rav Yosef, and Rav Yosef says, Tani Gurian taught, and we will continue with this discussion in the next video on Daf Tzadi Dalid Amud Aleph.